Hi, everybody. Welcome back to yet another cracking edition of the Matt Brown Show. This is the Secrets of Fail series where we're talking to highly successful CEOs about their epic business blunders. And with us on the line is none other than Stan Oliver, the CEO of DigiFlight. Stan, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Stan, why don't you kick us off with the elevator pitch? Tell us a little bit about DigiFlight and what you guys are up to over there.
Sure. So I spent 20 years in the Army as an Army aviator, and that got me involved in technology. So kind of started DigiFlight, and based on my house, we are a technology firm focused on cybersecurity, enterprise IT, and aerospace. We are the leader in attack helicopter training around the globe. We provide that type of training for about 19 foreign military partners, and our combat aviation brigades and the National Guard units that have Apache attack helicopters. We also provide cybersecurity protection across 16 critical infrastructure sectors. We're sitting at about 350 employees. Those employees cover the gamut of cyber professionals and aerospace professionals, to include those instructor pods that I was talking about. That's what we're up to. We're in my mind, we're revolutionizing cybersecurity, and we're revolutionizing the way you train aviators.
Amazing. Awesome stuff. So, Stan, let's get on to the meat and the potatoes of this episode. What is your story of fail for our audience around the world today?
Sure. I'll tell you, when probably our biggest failure was when the government shut down in 2013. We had great, significant growth and great success up until that point. What we didn't do as carefully as I should have is to make sure we had the capital to last through an extended period of time. The government shut down. It came right back up in about 45 days. So it shut down at the end of the fiscal year, 2013, and came back up in about 45 days. What we did not understand is that by the time the U.S. government came back, get back funded, it takes a while for those contracts to get funded and the companies to be funded by the government. So the government's funded, but we weren't funded. So we went through probably a 6-month period before we had the government started producing. We started producing revenues from government contracts. That literally put us out of business. We had to go do some non-traditional lending and things like that, and that was very difficult for us. So that was our biggest failure. We survived that, but we had a lot of lessons learned out of that.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's get into that now, Stan. What did that experience teach you? Is there like a key lesson or insight that you carry with you today through that experience?
Yeah, one thing is I think in some cases we panicked a little bit.
Yeah.
Right? Instead of being calm and deliberate about coming out of that, because we were running real short on cash, so we did have to go to some non-traditional lending. We probably didn't have to do that as much as we did, and so be calm and deliberate about as you're working your way through a problem like that. Especially if any lesson I offer is that in itself. The other one is make sure that you try to keep the adequate capital on hand to last you. It's almost like when you're talking personally, right? Both the organization, personally, always have enough emergency cash on hand, with capital on hand to get you through the tough periods.
Mm-hmm. Stan, what have you learned about dealing with the emotional side of those sorts of existential events? Like, I've sold companies, I've had many companies that have failed, and I find like the first one's the worst, right? When you haven't been in that situation, like the feelings, the emotions are quite overwhelming, especially, it's like a stock market graph, isn't it? Being a CEO and growing a business, like the downs are really, really down, and so when things are down, Stan, what do you do to, cope? What mechanisms or tools do you use?
Yeah, the first thing I think about is, the effect that anything I do, what it'll have on my employees, my people. So that's emotionally, that's probably the most concerning to me. What will happen to my people if I don't solve this problem? Because they're the lifeblood of what we do. So that was one of the emotional down. I wanted to protect those employees. But again, I mentioned calmness. You got to be able to look at the problem set and calmly work your way through it instead of a knee-jerk reaction. You don't want to do that. because that you'll probably make the wrong decision if you do that. So not overreacting, being calm and deliberate about your actions. So if I was going to think of anything emotionally, that's how I would approach it.
Beautiful. Stan, if you could get into the Matt Brown Show time machine and go back in time prior to this event happening, what would you do differently and why?
Sure. I would have built better relationships with my financial institutions, and we were a small business. We were just learning how to deal with the banks and other financial institutions. So build better relationships with those individuals and other investors that I had relationships with that I think I could have nurtured those relationships better. So when you're in trouble, they have a lot of flexibility and latitude to do things that can help you out. But if you don't have a good relationship with them, guys like yourself, right? It's hard to come to them when you're in trouble and say, hey, I need a little assistance. So build those relationships better with those financial institutions, whether it's whoever they are, private equity firms, maybe venture capital, other investors, potential investors, so that if you need a little assistance, you're not coming with a 911 out of the blue.
Yeah. Well, if you ever get stuck, let me know. I've got a massive venture capital network.
I don't have that type of problem in the future.
Yeah, I got so much access to capital. It's frightening. So let me know. But we have to move on. Stan, what is your advice to other CEOs in terms of, the importance of failure in business success?
Yeah. This is a Jim Collins kind of comment I believe in. That is, you will fail in some way, right? And whether you're playing basketball like LeBron James, success, failure is a better teacher than success. Let me say that. Right? And to me, that's exactly what it was. You have success and you learn from it, but you really learn from failure more than you do success. And so understand you're going to fail. Learn from that failure. Don't look at it like it's the end of the line. And then always follow your dreams. If the things that you really dreamed about, your heart was into it, follow that and learn from that failure, and you'll do fine.
Beautiful. Stan, you're obviously a very successful CEO. Are there books or tools or resources that you recommend other CEOs use on their journey?
Sure. I was just telling you, my favorite author is Jim Collins. That's one of my favorite authors. Good to Great, and the series of books that he wrote, and How the Mighty Falls, right? That book there, that's one that I'd say gives you some insight into you can fail and the various stages of failure. I read almost everything about the top, the top technologists in my field, books they've written, whether it's Elon Musk or Steve Jobs, at least the books written about Jobs and those type of books. But I would say that, the Harvard Business Review, that series of that monthly subscription is very, very useful to me because there's a lot come out of that. And a lot of things come out of the White House on national security strategy if you're involved in that field, national intelligence strategy, those kind of documents. They're useful. And guidance coming out of those organizations, the White House and those organizations, and related to technology.
Amazing. Well, Stan, that concludes your time in the hot seat. I appreciate you for being vulnerable and telling us all about your epic business blunder. I'm sure there's many others, but we don't have time for all of that. But I appreciate you for being here. Thank you for making a difference to other CEOs and entrepreneurs out there.
Hey, Matt, thank you. I enjoyed being in the hot seat.
Not as much as I enjoyed having you there, pal.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Have a great week. Cheers, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.